So let's look at a couple more example problems where we have the equations of lines and we need to determine if the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or something else. And the general strategy is that we can rewrite our lines, we can solve them for y to put them into slope-intercept form where the number multiplied by x, which we usually call m, is the slope of the line. And if the two lines have the same slope, then they are parallel. If their slopes, when multiplied together, are equal to -1, then they're perpendicular. Or with perpendicular lines, the other way to look at it is that the slopes of two lines that are perpendicular to each other are the negative reciprocals of each other. Where remember, reciprocal, you just flip a fraction. And from this top equation, you can notice this is already in slope-intercept form. So the number multiplied by x is -2/3. So that's the slope of this top equation. And for the bottom equation, you might actually recognize this as point slope form. Since point slope is y minus y1 is m times x minus x1, where with point slope, you know one of the points, in this case, it'd be at 5, -7, and you know the slope, m, which is the number multiplied by x minus x1. But if you don't remember this, you can still follow the same strategy. You can just solve this for y. So let's do that very quickly. We have y plus 7 is 3/2 times x minus 5. And let's start by distributing the 3/2. So we get y plus 7 is 3/2 multiplied by x. And 3/2 times -5 would be minus 15/2. Now let's subtract 7 on each side. So we get y by itself. So y is 3/2 times x. And we have minus 15/2. And then we're subtracting 7, which I'll write as 14/2 so that they have the same denominator. And then lastly, we just simplify. So y is equal to 3/2 x minus 29/2, or minus 14.5. But the main idea is you can find the slope now. It's the number multiplied by x. And in this case, our slope is 3/2, which, like I mentioned, if you recognize point slope form, you can see that right away. But if you don't remember this, then you can follow this same strategy and just solve it for y so that it's in slope-intercept form. Now, notice that we have different slopes, but if you take one of the slopes and you flip it over and then take the opposite of that, we get the other slope. So that's what happens when two lines are perpendicular. And the other way to tell is that if you take one of the slopes and you multiply it by the other one, if you get -1, then the two lines are perpendicular. So there are two ways to remember it. If you take the product of the two slopes and they're equal to -1, then you know they're perpendicular. Or if these slopes are negative reciprocals. If you flip one of them and make a negative and it's equal to the other one, then you also know that they're perpendicular. But we can test this product right here. We can just multiply the two. So we get -2/3 multiplied by 3/2. And multiplying straight across, we get -6 up top, and 3 times 2 is 6 down below, which is -1. So that's the property of perpendicular lines, so we know choice C is the correct answer. These two lines, if you graph them, they form a right angle at their intersection point. So let's do one last problem. And again, we're just going to use the same strategy. We're given two equations. If we put them both in slope-intercept form, then we can very quickly determine what the slopes are. And notice for this top equation, it's already in slope-intercept form. And we just need to look at the number multiplied by x, which in this case is 6. So now we want to take our other equation here, and we can solve it for y. So we have 2x minus 12y is 24. And let's subtract 2x on each side. So we get minus 12y is minus 2x plus 24. And from here, let's just divide everything by minus 12 so that we can get y by itself and cancel out that multiplication. So on the left-hand side, we just get y, or 1 times y. And the negatives cancel out here, and we get 2 over 12, which simplifies to 1 over 6. So we have 1/6 x, and 24 over negative 12 would be negative 2. So the slope of this line, notice, is just the number multiplied by x, and in this case, it's just 1/6. So our slope here is 1/6. Now, you might be tempted to say these are perpendicular because they are reciprocals of each other. If we took this slope and put it over 1 and flipped it, we would get the other slope. But remember that with perpendicular lines, they have to be reciprocals and opposites of each other. So one has to be negative and one has to be positive. But we can also test with the idea that if we multiply the two slopes together, we can say we have the pink line slope multiplied by the green line slope. This should equal negative 1. But if we multiply these, we have 6 multiplied by 1/6. Notice that 6 times 1/6 is just equal to positive 1. So these are not going to be perpendicular lines, and they're not the same slope, so they're not parallel, and they're definitely not the same line. So that leaves us with one choice. They are intersecting lines, but they're not perpendicular. So choice D would be the correct answer.